So, I recently watched the Avengers Endgame re-release, because, we're all slaves to Disney. The tribute was touching, but the bonus scene was trashy as heck. Anyway, as I was watching the movie again, I decided to look at it with a more critical eye, as I've already seen it twice before. While doing so, I noticed something that felt out of place. Even though it was a 3-hour movie, this element felt stuffed in, and not really that important to the plot. As you can probably guess by the thumbnail, I'm talking about the Ronin character arc. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that it didn't seem believable. It made perfect sense that after the events of Infinity War, there would be those who snapped. But aside from a cool action scene, Clint's killing spree doesn't really add anything to the movie overall. In fact, I would even argue Ronin detracts from the film when you start to think about it. When we first learn about Ronin, Rhodey, played by the legendary Don Cheadle, seen here with his natural body, is hesitant about finding him. And why wouldn't he be? Ronin's killing not only drug kingpins, but innocent people. However, after Natasha goes and talks to him for like 2 minutes, everybody acts like it never happened. When they get back to Avengers compound, not one person cares that they're sitting next to a serial killer. Some might say that they've all killed before, but not like Ronin has. His actions don't get acknowledged, which doesn't make sense and isn't right. Sorry, scratch that. They don't get acknowledged until the movie needs to give him some motivation on Vormir. Now, if he had been the one to sacrifice himself, then sure, I could see the value in having him go through this transformation. But as we all know, he's not. After Vormir, they're kind of too busy fighting off Thanos to deal with the moral gray area that Ronin was operating in, so that's fine. But what really drove home the pointlessness of this arc was when they showed the scene of Clint going back to see his family, and everyone smiling like there's nothing wrong with the world. Their dad is now a serial killer. That's messed up. Basically, I wasn't a fan of how they handled Ronin. I don't read the comics, so I don't know how Ronin is used there, but this didn't feel like the right way to do it. They shoved the arc into this movie, didn't give it enough time to flesh it out, then ended it in a way that they can basically never use it again. I mean, Clint got his family back. I would hope that would be enough to curb his stabbing tendencies. So, now that I've poked apart the Ronin character arc, what would I have done? Well, in my version, I still would have had Clint's family get dusted, but I wouldn't have made him turn into Ronin. I feel like a transformation such as this deserves enough time to stand on its own, and there simply wasn't enough time in Endgame to explore it. So, instead of being in Japan, Clint would be living in Avengers compound with Nat. There would be a couple of scenes of him talking to Natasha, and even though it's been 5 years, you can tell that he's barely holding it together, and it's really her who's keeping him from going over the edge. Then it plays out mostly the same from there. Scott comes to them with the idea of time travel, they figure out how to make it work, get the team together, plot the mission, etc. This time, there would be no need to explain why everyone's cool with Clint after everything he's done. Now, we get to Vormir. I think this was the main reason that the writers decided to include the killing spree in this film, because as I said, it gives him some motivation to sacrifice himself. But let's be honest here, both of these characters are heroes. They're always willing to sacrifice themselves for their friends. So while the motivation might not be quite as strong in my version, I think it still works. They go through their banter, then the fight, and eventually Natasha sacrifices herself. This right here would be the turning point. Clint would be devastated, as he is in the original, and start to break apart. Anyway, the rest of the movie plays out basically the same, except at the end. When Clint goes back to his family, he's not entirely happy. After hugging his wife, he says, or mouths I think, because Tony's talking over these scenes, "I lost her." Now, the seeds for his change are planted. You may be wondering why he would become Ronin after getting his family back. Well, I would argue that Natasha was just as important to him. Clint and Nat were the best of friends, almost more like brother and sister. They had watched each other's backs on countless missions, fought side by side against aliens and robots, and really grounded each other in the world of the Avengers. She was the one who held them together all those years, and now she's gone. And in Clint's mind, Natasha traded her life for his family's lives. The only reason they're alive was because she died. I think that after all he's endured, that would be enough to break him. In this version of the story, they would have done enough groundwork to set up Ronin, but not wasted the arc. Now they would have an opportunity to explore his transformation fully. Personally, I think the Ronin arc would make an excellent Disney Plus series. It would be enough time to show him break apart and truly become this different character. But anyway, those are just my thoughts. Thank you for listening to my ideas, and I will see you sometime in the future.